This video picks up at line 123, just as Othello dispatches Iago to fetch Desdemona. While Iago is gone, Othello tells them that he will fill them in on how I did thrive in this fair lady's love, and she in mine. He goes on to reveal that he was under the impression that Brabantio, rather than loathing him, loved me, because he oft invited me, still questioned me the story of my life from year to year, the battles, sieges, fortunes that I have passed. Brabantio, so Othello tells it, was captivated by a swashbuckling life story filled with danger and near-fatal experiences of most disastrous chances, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hair-breadth escapes of the imminent deadly breach. We find out that Othello was captured, sold into slavery, where he stayed until he was bought out of it, after which he travelled far and wide through Anta's vast and deserts idle, through fantastic landscapes of huge caves and barren deserts. His tales of the exotic and at the same time terrifying people that he met, of the cannibals that each other eat, the anthropophagi, and men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders, not only intrigued Brabantio, but also this to hear would Desdemona seriously incline. It seems that Desdemona would hurry her way through her household chores, which took her away from his stories, so that she could return to with greedy ear devour up my discourse. She was so fascinated by Othello's tales that she had only heard by parcels or in fragments, that she extracted a promise from him that he should tell her it all from beginning to end. This he did, and he often brought her to tears when I did speak of some distressful stroke that my youth suffered. At the conclusion of his life story, he says that Desdemona showed how moved she was. My story being done, she gave me for my pains a world of sighs. And he then goes on to make the shock claim that it was actually Desdemona, not him, who made the first move, even if she does it in a slightly roundabout way. She wished she had not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. She thanked me and bade me, if I had a friend who loved her, I should but teach him how to tell my story, and that would woo her. This was all the encouragement that Othello needed for him to tell her that her love for him was reciprocated. Upon this hint I spake. She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. This is the only witchcraft I have used. This is interesting, as the way Othello tells it, Desdemona doesn't seem like the maiden never bold who wasn't remotely interested in marriage, as described by her father Brabantio. In fact, taking into consideration the protocols of the time, she has been positively brazen. They can't both be right, but fortunately we won't have to wait too long to find out which of them it is, as Othello concludes his speech by announcing her long-awaited arrival. Here comes the lady, let her witness it. Desdemona enters accompanied by Iago and attendants. Meanwhile, the Duke has taken on a conciliatory tone. He tells Brabantio that he thinks this tale would win my daughter too, although we must take his words with a pinch of salt. Although the Duke has shown that he is different from the other characters in that he has been the only one so far to address Othello by his given name, suggesting that he sees beyond his colour to his identity as an individual, we must still be wary of jumping too quickly to the conclusion that he is colourblind, to the extent that he would give his blessing to a union between Othello and his own daughter. It is easy, after all, for him to make this pronouncement, as he will never be put into a position where he will have to put his money where his mouth is. The way he urges Brabantio to make the best of a bad job. Good Brabantio, take up this mangled matter at the best. Men do their broken weapons rather use than their bare hands. Smacks of political expediency more than anything else. Let's not forget, after all, that he desperately needs Othello to go off to Cyprus against the approaching Turkish army. So confident in what his prejudices tell him must have happened and that he will be vindicated, Brabantio urges the Duke to wait until after Desdemona has given her side of it, when, if she confess that she was half the wooer, destruction on my head if bad blame light on the man. And he asks her to whom she most owes obedience. When Desdemona finally gets to speak, it is obvious that Brabantio is going to be made to eat his words, as we find her both calm and self-assured. She's clearly neither under the influence of any magical potions, nor the maiden never bold characterised by her father. She tells him very honestly that she has a divided duty. She acknowledges that to her father she is bound for life and education, and that both of these have taught her to respect her father. She is, however, also a wife, and so much duty as my mother showed to you, preferring you before her father, so much I challenge that I may profess due to the more, my lord. Desdemona is smart here, as she uses her mother's loyalty to her father, which of course she wishes to emulate, in order to answer the question in such a way that it makes her point, without showing her father blatant disrespect. Note, however, how she also refers to Othello as the Moor. We could argue that in doing so she makes it perfectly clear that she is not under the influence of any kind of drugs, as argued by Brabantio, as it is obvious that she knows exactly what she has done. She does, however, refer to his race in a more problematic way later on in this scene, but we'll discuss that further when it arises. Brabantio, of course, cannot argue against Desdemona's reasoning, as she knew, and he surrenders immediately, urging the Duke to resume their discussion of the matters of state that he interrupted. He turns to Othello once more, addressing him contemptuously as Moor. Rather than give the pair his blessing, he tells them that, I here do give thee that with all my heart, which but thou hast already, with all my heart I would keep from thee. He tells Desdemona that he is glad that she is his only child, otherwise her elopement would have taught him to become a tyrant to his remaining children, to whose legs he would have fastened wooden clogs or blocks to prevent them from running away. The Duke steps in an attempt to pour oil on troubled waters, and says that he will now speak on Brabantio's behalf, and in the manner that he would under normal circumstances if he wasn't as angry as he is now. The final 8 lines of his speech comprise 4 heroic couplets, which are rhyming couplets of iambic pentameter, di-dum, 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 to deliver 4 maxims, which are short and forceful statements which express a general truth or a rule of how you should behave. He urges Brabantio to be philosophical, telling him that griefs or troubles are ended when there is no possibility of a cure, and that there is no point in crying over spilt milk, because it is the next way to draw new mischief on. In fact, if you smile when you are being robbed, it actually steals something from the thief. And if you indulge in a bootless or pointless grief, you are only stealing from yourself. And with that, the matter, as far as the Duke is concerned, is settled. Brabantio, however, cannot resist getting in the last word, and he sarcastically applies the Duke's maxims to the situation in Cyprus, to demonstrate that they are mere platitudes and therefore cold comfort indeed when you are the one who is personally affected. So, he says bitterly, if we are cheated out of Cyprus by the Turkish army, we won't have lost it at all, so long as we can smile. He says it's easy to find comfort in these moralising sentences when you don't need it in the first place, and that, as far as he is concerned, a broken heart was never mended by mere words. But words are words. I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. And he urges them once more to return to the affairs of state. The Duke duly turns his attention to the pressing matter of Cyprus. Note how he switches to prose, which signals a change from philosophising over broken hearts to the practicalities and logistics of war. The Duke feels it best that Othello go to replace the man already in charge there, who, although he is of most allowed sufficiency, the fortitude or defensive strength of the place is best known to Othello. He is therefore sorry to dampen Othello's joy so soon in his married life. Othello, however, eagerly accepts the commission, telling him that he is so used to going to war that he, paradoxically, gets most comfort from suffering hardship. The tyrant custom, most grave senators, hath made the flinty and steel couch of war my thrice-driven bed of down. In other words, lying down to sleep on the battlefield with weapons and wearing a full suit of armour is as comfortable to him as the softest of feather beds. He does, however, ask that his wife be appropriately looked after while he is away. The Duke's suggestion that this should be at her father's is greeted with a chorus of noes from not only Brabantio and Othello, but also from Desdemona herself. She is anxious not to live there because every time he looks at her, he will become angry. She has another idea to which she begs the Duke to listen. She begins her speech by acknowledging that she has violated societal norms by marrying Othello in the first place, but, she says, the fact that this will cause disruption to her future is just evidence that she loves him. That I did love the more to live with him, my downright violence and storm of fortunes made trumpet to the world. This is all very commendable, as she is prepared to turn her back on what society expects, as well as estrange herself from her family, all for the sake of love. Note, however, how Desdemona once more draws attention to Othello's race by referring to him as the Moor, rather than by his name. The fact that she has done this twice now is an indication that it is at the forefront of her mind. Her next words seem, on the surface, to reinforce what she has just declared. My heart subdued even to the very quality of my lord. I saw Othello's visage in his mind, and to his honours and his valiant parts did I my soul and fortunes consecrate. If, however, we look at them in more detail, they are much more problematic and suggest that she has deep-rooted prejudices of her own. She saw, she says, Othello's visage or face in his mind. In other words, she was attracted to his mind, not what he looked like. Now, in the normal scheme of things, it is an admirable quality to not judge a book by its cover, but the way that this is applied in this context would seem to imply that as far as she is concerned, the colour of his skin is inherently unattractive and unlovable, and that she fell in love with him in spite of it. This, in turn, would suggest that not only is she fighting societal prejudices and pressures, but she is also fighting her own. She finishes her speech by imploring the Duke to allow her to accompany her husband to Cyprus, because if she is left behind, she will be unable to be his wife, and will be miserable while he is gone. The rights for which I love him are bereft me, and I a heavy interim shall support by his dear absence. Let me go with him. Othello supports her plea, emphasising that this is not for sexual reasons, as he believes he is too mature to be overcome by his passions, but because he wishes to take pleasure from what her mind has to offer. I therefore beg it not to please the palate of my appetite, nor to comply with heat the young effects in my distinct and proper satisfaction, but to be free and bounteous to her mind. He reassures the Duke that she will in no way take his mind off what he is there to do. The Duke has clearly had enough of the whole business, because it's getting in the way of what's most important, and whatever happens, Othello must leave that night. He leaves it up to them to privately determine, either for her stay or going. The affair cries haste, and speed must answer it. You must hence tonight. The Duke then commands that Othello leave some officer behind, so that he can follow on with information and instructions. Othello selects his ancient or ensign, Iago, to follow on in a later ship with Desdemona. A man he is of honesty and trust. To his conveyance I assign my wife, with what else needful your good grace shall think be sent after me. Note the words honesty and trust, which he uses to describe Iago. This is not the last time that the epithet honest, with a huge dose of dramatic irony, shall be applied to him. The Duke's final words to Brabantio are, on the surface, a reminder that he should be grateful that he has gained a son-in-law who is a good man. But if we look closely at the language, we can see that it is just as problematic as Desdemona's earlier statements that she fell in love with Othello, despite his appearance. If virtue no delighted beauty lack, your son-in-law is far more fair than black. He is saying that virtue or high moral standards has its own beauty, and in this sense Othello is beautiful on the inside. In other words, he conflates being fair, i.e. beautiful, with being fair, i.e. pale or white, and by implication, virtuous, and so by contrast being black, i.e. of African heritage, with being black, i.e. ugly and sinful. It is supposed to be a compliment, but is, when all is said and done, a racial slur. Whether Shakespeare genuinely meant it as a compliment or not is up for debate, as sensibilities and views have changed over the last 500 years, and he may have been oblivious to his own deep-seated prejudices. Brabantio's own parting shot to Othello will come back to haunt him. Look to her more, if thou hast eyes to see. She has deceived her father, and may thee. Othello's response, my life upon her faith, is a declaration of his confidence in her love and loyalty, but it will of course prove both ironically and sadly to have been prophetic. Nearly everybody exits, leaving Othello, Desdemona, Iago and Rodrigo. Othello turns his attention to the arrangements that need to be made, addressing Iago with the epithet honest. Honest Iago, my Desdemona must I leave to thee. I prithee, let thy wife attend on her, and bring her after in the best advantage. He exits with her to spend what few remaining hours they have before he departs together. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.